Okay, here we go. Oh, that wasn't on. Oh, mate. Hello! Oh, got my camera in the right position. Welcome to this live stream. Sorry, it's late. Apologies for anyone who's waiting. It's the first time, really, so I just had to work out how to use this software and had some a few technical difficulties. So please bear with me while I just organise my windows, and then we will get started. Okay, so who have we got in the chat? Have we still got Ahmed? I've got too many windows and not enough screens. Are you still there, Ahmed? I can see the chat window. I can't see. How do I see how many people are in the room? Concurrent viewers. I don't know how I can see how many people are in the room. Three views, 3 concurrent viewers. Ooh. If you are in the chat room, then please raise your hand. Okay, so Ahmed is here. I think there's a number next to a human icon. See, I'm using software, Ahmed, so I have never done this before. I can't see how many people are in the room. I don't know where I can see that. There's a number next to a human icon. Can you see how many people are in the room, Ahmed? Can you tell me how many there are? Ah, dear. Can only get better from here. This is how it starts. Who knows how it'll end? How can I see how many people are actually watching? What does this mean? The number of viewers connected to the stream. Okay, so it says, okay. So it's telling me 2. So does that mean, am I one of them? I think I'm probably one of them. 2 of them. Okay, so there's two of you. So there's someone else here. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so apologies for the delay and apologies for the extra delay of sorting this out. So I can see the chat window, I can see myself, which is useful, but I can't see how many people are in the room unless I click on something. So that is something that I need to address. As well as perfecting the art of speaking and trying to sort out the technology at the same time. I don't want to have to keep clicking to see how many people there are, because the thing I'm worried about is that there's nobody here and I'm talking to no one. So if I'm talking to no one, then I want to be sure of that. Okay, so I hope you're all doing very well. Thank you to Ahmed, who's joining me from Egypt. If there is somebody else out there or in there in the chat, please reveal yourself. Say hello. That would be nice. Introduce yourself. Tell me where you're from, what your first language is. That's always useful to know. So we're going to be talking about the present perfect, of course. It is one of the most commonly used thank you, Ahmed. Yeah, I think I'm okay. I think I can see that now, but I do have to click on another part of the screen. Okay, so the present perfect is one of the most commonly used tenses in English, in British English. We'll come on to that later. And it doesn't exist in the same way in most languages, and that's why it's difficult. So if you find it tricky, then don't worry, there will be more. Most people find it tricky. Okay, so when do we use the present perfect? So we use it to connect the past and the present. Now, where it gets tricky is that sometimes, as we'll see, the action has finished, but it's relevant or important in the present. Sometimes it's about a fact or something that's true now and it was true in the past. So in that sense, there are two kinds of present perfects. Some for actions that have finished, some but are important in the present, and others that are true now and were true, or have been true for a period of time, thereby connecting the past with the present. Okay, so what is the present perfect? How do we technically make it, or form it, I should say? So we've got I or you or we or they either have in the positive or haven't in the negative, and then we add a past participle. Some people know the past participle as the third form of the verb, or of any verb. So you've got the present tense, like I eat, past tense, I ate, and the past participle, eaten. So as I'm sure you know, those of you who are at an intermediate or above level, that often the past participle is the same as the verb in the past tense, but not always. There are some verbs that have a totally different and separate past participle. So I, you, we, they, have or haven't, plus past participle, or he, she, or it has or hasn't. So as you can see, grammar is quite straightforward in English in that sense. You just need to be careful when you're saying has or hasn't. Okay, I think there's two people in the room. For Ahmed, introduce yourself when you join. Tell me where you're from, what your name is, and as we go, you are very welcome to ask any questions. Okay, so that's how we form it. Let's move on. So we can talk about actions that started in the past and continue to the present. So these are things that are perhaps true. For example, I have lived here for 2 years. So we can use for and the period of time, and we can also use since. So we can say she's worked here since 2020. So it's not really, well, it is an action that started, or something that was true in the past, and it continues to be true. It's true now in the present. So I've lived here for 2 years, or she has worked here since 2020. Ahmed, can you try and write a sentence using either for or since, practicing the present perfect? Make your own sentence. Let's make sure this is interactive. I've been working as a tour guide for 6 years now. Yeah, I like the way you put in now. That is part of natural speech. And obviously you could do it the other way around. You could say, I've been working as a tour guide since 2016, you could say. So I've been doing this for, I've been working, or whatever it is. Or you could say, I have worked at my place of work. I've worked for Expedia since this time. Okay. Was I showing the right one? I don't think I was showing the right one. Yeah, so Ahmed, you've actually used the present perfect continuous, which is fine, and you've used it in the right way. As I said, we can also just say I've worked here for 6 years, or I've worked for Expedia since 2014. So we'll do the present perfect continuous another time, but it is very similar. Okay, what was I? No, it's not a mistake at all. It's more that if somebody else is listening and getting confused, but I don't think there is anyone else here. It's just me and you. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so something that finished. Experience. So this is why it's a really fun one to practice, because we can talk about anything that we've done in our life. So when we're getting to know someone, the present perfect is a really good tense to use. When we're making small talk with someone, maybe we meet someone in a social situation, or it could be at work, and we need to start a conversation or fill the time. We can use present perfect questions. Have you heard of this? Have you heard the news? You can say did you hear about that? So often with the present perfect, or often we have a choice. We can often say some things in the past simple. We could say, did you hear the news? We could say, have you heard the news? So sometimes we have a choice and it doesn't make any difference to the meaning. In the examples here, we've got, I haven't been to London. So the question would be, have you been to London? Or if it's something more unusual, we could say, have you ever been to London? And the answer would be, I have been to London, or I haven't been to London. We can also say, she has seen the film before. The question would be, has she seen the film? Has she seen the film before? Yes, she has seen the film before. Okay, so we can use it for experience. Hello, Bakary. Very good to have you here, Bakary. If you have any questions, let me know. Bakary, are you from Sudan, Bakary? Did we have you before? Is that the same Bakary? Oh, and we've got Mark as well. Okay, they're all in. They're all coming now. The big dogs are in the room. No problem, Mark. It's okay. I was late as well. I think I'm gonna do this again. Yes, I remembered you, Bakary. Okay, so I think I'm gonna do the same thing again tomorrow. So this is kind of like a practice for all of us. Okay, so there's 4 of us now. Brilliant. Okay, so we use the present perfect for anything that we've done in our lives. So who would like to ask me a present perfect question? Let me see you practicing the present perfect, and I promise to answer the questions truthfully. That's not completely true. Our focus is on speaking, so it doesn't matter if I tell you the truth, and it doesn't matter if you tell me the truth. We can invent our own reality when we're practicing our English. Have you been... Okay, good question. Okay, so this is a very common mistake, Mark. Hope you don't mind me pointing it out. Have you been to Asia? So when we're talking about a country or a place, we say to. Have I been to Asia? So a natural way to answer it is to say, yes, I have, or I could say, I have actually. And you can think about my intonation if you are at an advanced level. I have actually, or yeah, I have. And then I might go into more detail. I've been to India, which was a very brief visit, and I've also been to the Middle East, which is technically Asia, but most people don't think of that when they think of Asia. But it's a good question because I haven't been to many countries in Asia, and I would love to explore Asia more. So you might answer a present perfect question with yes, I have, or I have actually, and then you might go into detail. So I might say, yeah, I have. I went to Mumbai a few years ago for work, but I was literally there for less than 48 hours, so it was not really a pleasant experience. It was quite tiring, and I was just in a taxi in traffic a lot of the time, so I didn't really get to see much at all. I just saw the inside of a hotel, the inside of a taxi, and the inside of an office, and that is not my idea of travel. But I did go out to a shop, and somebody helped me buy a sari, so that was the only almost authentic experience that I have. Okay, so has anyone else got any present perfect questions? Oh, here we go. So Bakary's asking me about famous Sudanese dish, al-sida, luguma, as it's also called. So have you... Okay, so this is a really good example, Bakary, so where we can remind ourselves that we need to use the past participle form of the verb. So you've said, have you ate? So ate is the past tense, so we're nearly there, but we need to use the past participle, which is eaten. So have you eaten asida? Or you could say, have you tried? Or have you ever tried asida? You could also ask it in a past simple way. You could say, did you try asida when you were in Sudan? Or when you were in Sudan, did you try asida? So remember, Bakari, you need to use the third form of the verb or the past participle when you're asking a present perfect question. But otherwise, it's a good question. Have you eaten asida? So Mark, you're asking me a follow-up question about your travel question. So if you want more details, you're probably going to follow up with a past simple question. So have you been to Asia? Yes, I went to India. Then you might ask, did you go for work? But you wouldn't say, have you been there for work? Because you're asking me something specific. So present perfect is general, connecting the past to the present. Have you been there? So this is any time. But if you're asking me something specific, then it should be a past simple question. But it's really good that you pointed that out. So did you go there for work would be the question. Did you go there for work? Ahmed has asked me, have you ever been allergic to any food? Okay. So technically you could ask this question, but it's more likely, Ahmed, that you would ask this as a past simple question. A present simple question. Are you allergic to anything? Are you allergic to any food? You could technically say, have you been allergic to any food? If it was a situation where I said, now I'm not allergic to any food. So if a doctor said, are you allergic to any food, or do you have any allergies? I might say no. And then the follow-up might be, have you ever been allergic to any food? So technically, there's nothing wrong with that question, Ahmed, but if there's no follow-up, it would be more natural just to say or ask, are you allergic to any food? Let me know if that makes sense. So there could only be a very specific situation where you would ask that question in the present perfect. So let me know if you have any questions about that or follow-up question. Have you ever tried asida? Perfect, Bakari. Now I like the way that you have corrected yourself. You've used a capital letter as well, which is something that Arabic speakers need to remember, and you're going to remember it. But Bakari, ask yourself, do you think asida should have a capital A? I know it's a very important food in Sudan, but is it a person, place or thing? Is it a proper noun? It's not, so we wouldn't use a capital letter for food. Mark has asked, can you tell me please about the use or the role of ever or never in the present perfect? Okay, hold that thought. We will come on to that. To put it simply, the meaning doesn't change. It's a really good question. We would usually use ever or never to give either more emphasis or for something that is more unusual. So if I'm in England, for example, and I ask someone about travel, if I would say, have you been to Paris or have you been to Spain? Because that's not very unusual. But if I was speaking to someone about travel and they mentioned, I don't know, then I might say, have you ever been to Cameroon? Or I might say, have you ever tried asida? Because it's more unusual. So we use ever for emphasis or for something that is unusual is the short answer. Okay, where are we now? Okay, so repeated actions. So we can use the present perfect to talk about something that has happened many times in the past. For example, they visited us many times. Or I could say, yes, I've been to Asia many times. So again, remember, with the present perfect, we don't talk about specific times, but we can talk generally, and we can talk about frequency. Or we can talk about not how many times we've done something, because that would be past simple, but we can say that something has been repeated. You could, as we can see in the next example, you could say how many times you've done it. So I've done this twice already, or you could say I've asked you twice already, or I've asked you 3 times now. So you can use the present perfect for actions that have finished, but we can use it to describe repeated actions. Can you, in the chat, give me some examples? Can you write a sentence to talk about your repeated actions, things that you've done many times or several times? I could say, for example, I've been to Egypt. I've only been to Egypt once, actually. I've only been to Asia once. I have eaten Sudanese food many times. Whilst I was in Sudan, see, no, I can't use the present perfect with that, but because I lived in Sudan, I have eaten Ethiopian food also many times. So we can use the present perfect for repeated action. So if you've got some examples you want to try in the chat, please do have a go. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so one of the biggest mistakes that people make is that they use the present perfect with specific times in the past, and we do not do that. So we never say I have been and then we give a date. So I have been to France in 2010. That's a very common mistake that people make. So we would use the past simple whenever we're talking about a specific time. So yesterday, Wednesday, or a year, or it could be a time. We would never say I have seen the film at 12 o'clock. It would always have to be past simple. Mark has written, I've tried many times my internet connection. Yes, you're nearly there. The idea is right. The word order is not quite right. You could say I've tried to connect many times. You could say my internet connection has cut out many times. But we would say, but the many times would usually come at the end. No, you could say I've tried many times. Yeah, we need another verb there. I've tried many times to connect to the internet. I have seen many times Titanic film. Okay, so we need to fix this sentence. I have seen Titanic, you could say, many times. Or I have seen the film Titanic many times. I've seen Titanic many times, or I've seen the film Titanic many times. So usually in natural English, Mark, we put the many times at the end. We can also use other adverbs like recently. So you might say, have you seen Titanic? You could say, we probably use past simple for that. I've shaved my beard Perfect. I've shaved my beard a few times or twice this week. That's more times than me, Ahmad. That's a really good example. I've done this twice this week. So here's the interesting thing. We wouldn't say I've shaved twice last week. We would say I've shaved twice so far this week, because this week hasn't finished yet. So the present perfect connects the past and the present. If we're talking about last week, something that's finished, we would use the past simple. I've shaved my beard twice this week. Perfect. Textbook, Ahmad. Well done. Shatur. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. So specific times is not the present perfect. We use the past simple for specific times. Okay, so we use the present perfect for non-specific times. I've seen this film before. As we said before, I've been to Asia, but if there is a time marker, we do not use the past simple. So going back to adverbs, we could say I've recently started shaving my beard. So we can use words like recently, or you could use words like always. I've always listened to the radio in the bath. So we can talk about things that are true, habits. So people in the chat, let me know what habits you have always done. So I've always had a sweet tooth. A sweet tooth in English means that you like eating sweet things. I've always had a salty tooth as well. I've always liked eating crisps and savoury snacks like that. So we could say I've always had a problem with. So maybe you can tell me what you've always struggled with. I have always struggled with being organised. Would be my one. What about you? Let me know in the chat. What have you always done, or what have you always found difficult? What have you always struggled with? Okay, keep those comments and questions coming. We're gonna go to a little quiz. Let me just get my quiz up. Oh, have I got my quiz? Have I got my quiz? Where's my quiz? Okay. Okay, I can't see my quiz. It's not very good for live. Oh, okay. Something else I wanted to mention, in fact. Americans don't like to use the present perfect. So this is something that you may find confusing. They don't use the language exactly the same way as us. Sometimes there are some small differences with grammar. So I noticed when I was around Americans, they say things like, "Did you eat?" Which is breaking the grammar rules somewhat. So in British English, we would say, "Have you eaten?" So if we're with a friend, for example, and maybe it's getting late or we're getting hungry, we might say, "Oh, have you eaten? Have you had lunch? Have you eaten lunch? Have you had lunch?" is more natural. Whereas Americans would often say, "Did you eat?" So this is a feature of North American English, and it may be confusing for you, but this is just the different ways that we use the language. Mark saying, "I've struggled to wake up early." Okay, so with that one, if it's true, you could say "I struggle" as a present simple sentence, or we were practicing using the adverb always. So you could say "I've always struggled to wake up early." So we're missing the adverb. If you say "I have struggled to wake up early," it's not completely clear what that means. Okay, so there is another, let me, I have to see. Okay, there is another really important use of the present perfect, and that is for news. So if you watch the news, you will often hear the present perfect happen, the present perfect used. So we use it for the news if we're watching the news, or if we're just talking to someone about something that's just happened. So we use the present perfect for the recent past. So a typical example would be if you're on the phone, you might say to someone, "Oh, I've just got home." So the action is finished, but it's important now. So you might say, "I've just got home. When I've got changed or had a shower or eaten, I'll call you back." So as I said, we use it all the time on the news. You'll see it on social media. The Prime Minister has announced this. So it happened in the past, it's actually finished, but it's important now. The Prime Minister has announced spending cuts. I've just talked with a friend of mine. Yeah, okay, so the key thing is here that it has to be important in the present. So in some contexts that would work, Mark, in others it might not. So it has to be relevant now in the present. So I might say to you, have you done it yet, Mark? You could say, "Yeah, I've just done it." So the action's finished, but it's relevant now, it's important now. Have you spoken to your friend? "Yes, I've just spoken to him." "Yes, I've just come off the phone with him." So they are actions that happened in the past, they're finished, but they're important now. An example might be, why are people celebrating in the street? Because England have just won the World Cup. So we might add "just" in as well to show that something has just happened, something happened very recently. Another thing would be "I've just noticed," or you could say "I've recently noticed." So you might ask a question, or you might complain about something. You might say, "Dear whoever, I have just noticed that you have taken £100 out of my account." I could say, "Yesterday you took £100. but it would be natural to use the present perfect. So I've just realised that you've taken £100 out of my account. So we use the present perfect for recent events, things in the recent past, and this is a very typical use of the present perfect. Okay, so I promised you a quiz. I can't find my quiz. Let me see if I can find it. As I said, I am often not as organised as I would like to be, so I didn't actually get round to finishing my quiz. Where is it? Okay, so I will have to make it up. Okay, so hopefully you're all ready for the quiz. Okay, so true or false, the present perfect is never used for actions that have finished in the past. True or false? They're never used for actions that have finished in the past. So it's finished, the action is over, it might never happen again. Is it true that we never use the present perfect in those cases? Yes, Mark, you're right, it's false. We do use it, you have been listening. We do use it for things that have happened. Yes, Bakary. We do use it for things that have happened. Like I've just come home, England have just won the World Cup, or England have lost again, which is probably more common. So it's finished, but it's relevant or important now, so we use it for news. Okay, true or false, we sometimes use a specific time when we construct the present perfect. So sometimes we could use, for example, Wednesday or 2020 or 9 o'clock using the present perfect. Is it possible that we can use specific times with the present perfect? Ben has just fired me from my job for smoking in the meeting room. I hope that's not true, Ahmed. Ben has just fired me. Yeah, exactly. So especially if it's something dramatic, you could say, I've just been fired. Or in British English, Ahmed, I'm sure you know, we would say sacked. Okay, so you're saying it's true. It's false. We never use a specific time when we're talking about, when we're using the present perfect. So remember, we would say, I've been to Asia. You could say, I've been to Asia recently, but we don't give a specific time. So we could never say, I've been in 2006, or I have been there at 7 o'clock. So we never use specific times with the present perfect. That would be the past simple. Let me know if you have any questions about that. Okay, so final quiz question. Americans don't like to use, a lot of Americans don't like to use the present perfect. Is that true or false? North Americans don't often use the present perfect. Is that true or false? It's Mark saying it's true. Ahmed saying it's false. Okay, that's good. It would be boring if everyone said the same thing, and it would be boring if everyone was right all the time. Okay, so Ahmed, you're outnumbered. It is actually true. North Americans, not all, but it is a feature, we can say, of North American English that they don't use the present perfect. They don't often obey our grammar rules, you know. But often they say, as I said, did you eat? And I heard something else, I heard on a YouTube video, they say did you, whereas we would say have you. So you may well hear that. Okay, so we are, oops, sorry, I didn't realise that you couldn't see me. So we're coming to the end now. So just finally, let me know if you have any more questions. Thank you so much for coming. I'm sorry I was late. I'm sorry it hasn't been as smooth as I would have liked, and probably you would have liked, but I'm using a new software, and it makes things a bit more complicated. They prefer to use the past tense. Yes, they do, Bakary. Not always, but you may hear that, so I thought it was important to point out. So I would say that listening to British people is a better way to learn the present perfect. I read somewhere that the following words are indicators of the present perfect: since, just, for, already, yet. Yes, exactly. So I would say, have you been there yet? Americans might say, did you go there yet? That's true. Since. So we could say I haven't been on holiday since 2020. So let me be clear. Maybe I should have. Maybe I was wrong when I said we never use specific times in the past. We can say, we can use it in the negative. So we can say, I haven't been there. I'm confusing myself now. Yeah, you can say, I haven't been there since a specific time. You could say, I haven't seen him for 2 weeks, or we could say, I haven't seen him since 2020. So that's probably the only time we can use a specific time marker when we're using the present perfect. I haven't seen him since 2020. But we couldn't use it in the positive. We couldn't say I have seen him at 6 o'clock, or I have seen him at 2020, or I have been there in 2020. So why do we use a specific time? Because it's not actually a specific time. Because if I say if I haven't been somewhere since 2020, I'm talking about the time between the time now and the time in the past, 2020. So it's not a specific time. So I can use that in the negative, but I'm not actually talking about a specific time. I hope that makes sense. Obviously there are some grey areas here. This is where it can get a little bit tricky. So I haven't been on holiday since 2020. So I'm not telling you specifically where I go, but I'm telling you where the time started. So you know that I have been on holiday before 2020, but you know that since 2020 I haven't. So I'm using that to talk about a period of time. I'm not talking about a specific time in the past. I hope that clarifies for you all. Okay, so I think we've had, well, I think there's been 4 of us for a lot of the time. it is very difficult for me to see how many people are here, so it's really useful that you've been participating in the chat, and I hope that made it more interesting for you. I hope that if I keep doing this and if I manage to give people more warning, I hope there'll be a lot more people in the chat, but at the moment there probably won't be, so hopefully that's good for you. It's good for me because it's easier to see the chats, it's easier to see who I'm talking to, but who knows where these live lessons will take us. Okay, have you learnt something? Tell me what you have learnt. Tell me if you have enjoyed this lesson. Mark said it was really useful. I'm really glad, Mark. I can tell, Mark, that you are a serious, dedicated student. Tell me something that you have learnt. What have you learnt in this lesson, Mark and Ahmed and Bakari? What have you learnt? I think Bakari and Mark have learnt a few things. Ahmed is probably an advanced level, so I'm not sure, Ahmed, if you have learnt anything from this lesson. Yes, good, Mark. There are different uses of the present perfect. Be interesting to know if you have learnt anything, Ahmed. I'm sure that you know this. Maybe it was useful to revise the present perfect, but I think that I'm guessing, Ahmed, if you're still here, but I think Ahmed uses English every day at work, so he gets lots of practice in. As a tour guide, he probably speaks in English most of the time as well, so he may well have known everything that we talked about today. Okay, so I think we'll do this again tomorrow. I'm probably going to do pretty much the same lesson, as there weren't a lot of people with us today, and hopefully there will be more tomorrow. I'll try to make it a little bit different for you if you want to come again, but if you do come again and you have any questions, then please let me know. Okay, so that's it. Thanks again for coming. Like the stream, don't forget to like it. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I do have a present perfect quiz video, so hopefully you can find that on my channel. So that has some quiz questions if you want to jump straight to it to practice. Okay, so thanks again, Ahmed, Mark and Bakari, and anyone else who's here. I hope I can teach you again very soon. Until the next time, take care.